Ahead and call the Senate to order. Members, please take your seats. Sergeant Arm appears to have secured the chamber doors. Almost. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators, on this beautiful Friday, March 20th, we are very pleased to have with us again Reverend J.C. Cadwallader. I practiced it like 3 times in my head before saying it. Thank you for your grace. From Warner Memorial Presbyterian Church in Kensington, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator, the vice chair of judicial proceedings, who is coming from voting, and we'll hopefully catch him in just a moment. Please rise for the invocation.
I bring you greetings from the Warner Memorial Presbyterian Church. I thank you for the opportunity to be here. And the greetings that I bring you are Happy Spring, Eid Mubarak, and let's go Lady Terps today on their first round. So lots of good greetings. There are many things that are keeping your attention. There are many sounds, noises, things that are capturing our imaginations these days. So as we start this session here, nearing the close of the session in total, I invite you to simply stand with one another and take a moment of silence. Not to remember anything in particular or in memory of anything, but simply to be together and share what we have in common, which is to breathe. So let us be in silence and start this session together. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well said. Thank you. Amen. Now, the interesting question here. Recognize the senator from Montgomery County.
Mr. President, seeing as how the senator from District 18 isn't here yet, I think that that Reverend Cadwallader was sometimes it offered us a good reminder that sometimes it's not about words, it's about emotions, it's about unity. And so in some way, Mr. President, could we journalize her presence here?
We will find a way to journalize, and we thank you very much for being here with us today, and good luck on the expansion project. Excellent. That's funny. Yeah. How do you journalize silence? I'm stuck. It's a blank piece of paper, right? We're here. We're present, right? That's right. All right. Let's see. Has everybody recorded their presence? Is everyone breathing? Okay. All right. The clerk will take the call. With 38 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Let's see. Let's begin the day. We don't have a resolution, but if we could begin the day with the Majority Leader, who has a special presentation for us.
Thank you, Mr. President. In celebration of Women's History Month, today we recognize and honor the pioneering women of the Maryland Department of State Police. The Maryland State Police was formed in 1921. 53 years passed before the gender barrier was broken when a pioneering group of 6 women graduated from the 72nd class of the Academy in 1974. These trailblazers wore the same uniforms and performed the same duties as men and paved the way for future generations in all roles. We would like to recognize these original 6. Now, are they in the gallery? Okay, up in the gallery, standing right now. We have Detective Sergeant retired Diane Culp, Sergeant retired Virginia F. Kincaid Lewis, Trooper First Class retired Margaret L. Scott Edge, Trooper retired Donna L. Whiting Stallings, Trooper retired Susan V. Topper. Trooper retired Jane E. Denby. The following year, in 1975, the first two African American female troopers of the Maryland State Police graduated as members of class number 73. Trooper First Class retired Jacqueline Ringgold Johnson. Former Trooper Maria Barnett. We would also like to recognize Major Delane Brady, the first and only female to serve as acting superintendent and hold the rank of colonel in the history of the Maryland State Police. Lieutenant Colonel retired Cynthia Smith, the first female to achieve the rank of lieutenant colonel in the history of the Maryland State Police. Major retired Anita L. Allen, the first African American female to achieve the rank of major in the history of the Maryland State Police. Lieutenant retired Marianne Pang Foxwell, the first Asian American female trooper of the Maryland State Police in 1982 as a graduating member of class number 82, and the first woman to lead the Maryland State Police Academy Physical Training and Defensive Tactics Program. And finally, Deputy State Fire Marshal Elise Valles Alicia. Am I closer? The first Latina female and highest ranking Latina Deputy State Fire Marshal with the Maryland Office of the State Fire Marshal. The historic achievements and dedicated service of these trailblazers have shaped the history and legacy of public safety in Maryland. We are honored today to have 7 of these 13 dynamic women here in the gallery with us today, and I'd like you to please thank them for their service to our state and for paving the way for opportunities for women in law enforcement.
I'd like to thank the majority leader and for that presentation, and thank you for the wonderful sheroes who are just trailblazers here in the state of Maryland. We are deeply appreciative of your leadership. Thank you so much.
Mr. President, could
yes.
I just add one little comment?
Please.
In talking to some of the women this morning, they're all alive and feisty and could still be doing the job.
If we could recognize the senator from the 27th.
Appreciate it, Mr. President. It's my honor to welcome back again and again and again to the Senate, our former senator for the District 27th, the colonel, the AKA the secretary, the AKA superintendent of the state police. So we appreciate the former Senator Michael A. Jackson being here.
Always welcome, sir. Always welcome. Excellent. See you soon. Yes, recognize Senator from Montgomery wanted to, no, from 14, District 14? Or Vice Chair of the committee? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. President?
Thank you. Yes.
Yes. I've been really thinking about it, and I was just really overwhelmed by the attendance today of the Maryland State Police. I'd like to journalize the remarks.
Excellent. Yes, without objection, we'll certainly journalize the remarks. Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator. All right. Any further? Let's see. Any further do we have any guests? Yes, Senator from District 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'd like to introduce the doctor of the day. Today we have from Meritus Health, Dr. Aaron George. Dr. George is not only a family practitioner here in our community, he also serves as the Associate Dean of Clinical Education at the Meritus School of Osteopathic Medicine. As you guys all know, that is the newest med school here in the state of Maryland. But what's more exciting is we have 3 students with us in the gallery behind us. From the first class to med school, we have Lavina Harrison, Alyssa Sutton, and Victoria Saggio. These individuals are from Philadelphia, New York, and Washington State. So, Mr. President, what we're doing is we're bringing individuals in from out of state. We're making doctors, and we're going to keep them here in the state of Maryland. So please
Excellent.
extend a warm Senate welcome to our students here and to Dr. George.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome. Welcome to Maryland. We hope you stay. We especially hope you stay in some of our rural communities, too. So thanks for your great work. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Any other introductions? Senator from Anne Arundel.
Yes, I wanted to introduce Giuseppe Mellinger. You may recognize him. He was here 2 years ago as a page, one of the very popular ones here, and he wanted to work in my office. So he's interning. He's been testifying before committees. That's why a lot of my bills are moving this year. But he's at Loyola, and I wanted to give him a warm Senate welcome.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Very good. Excellent. Other introductions? Any other introductions today? If not, so be considered the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. Let's do our administrative. We've got a message from the House of Delegates, number 21. Clerk will read the bills.
House Bill 57, Delegate Vogel, Public Schools, Maryland Civic Excellence Program established.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. They will be referred to their appropriate standing committees. Scheduling-wise, today, actually, all right, we may have some folks that are jumping off, have to do some votes off the floor, so we're going to be a little bit bouncing around today. We'll do the best we can. We're going to try and start with second readers and get as many of those done so that folks can kind of tie up some loose ends on some things that are outstanding in committee. We will start with the Committee on Finance. We'll start with Finance. We're going to have a second session today. We'll see, a couple hours, probably come back around 4 or 4:30, so a little bit earlier, so not much committee time in the afternoon today, but we do have the second session. We'll get through as much as we can. Things are looking good if we can move through. It looks like tomorrow's going to be a free day, hopefully, so fingers crossed, don't want to jinx us. So, all right, let's start with Finance. We'll go to report number 26. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 385, the President, Public Health Recommendations for Immunizations, Screenings, and Preventative Services, Pharmacist, Admin, Required Health Insurance Coverage, the VAX Act, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the Senator from District 12 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 385 requires the Secretary of Health to issue, publish, and distribute recommendations for immunization, screenings, and preventive services that follow the generally accepted consensus within the scientific community and sound clinical guidance. A pharmacist may administer a vaccination recommended by the Secretary to an individual who is at least 7 years old. The bill also alters health insurance coverage requirements for certain immunizations, screenings, and preventive services. Obsolete language regarding the pertussis vaccine is also repealed. The bill takes effect July 1st, 2026, and applies to all policies, contracts, and health benefit plans issued, delivered, and renewed in the state on or after January 1st, 2027. There are 2 amendments. The first is technical. Amendment number 2 requires the Secretary, prior to adopting a recommendation for preventive services that is not an immunization and has not been recommended by certain federal agencies, to hold a 30-day notice and comment period, obtain a specified Maryland Healthcare Commission analysis, and also cite the authoritative medical organization on which the recommendation would be based. There is no fiscal impact. Move the adoption of 2 committee amendments and favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 385 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 387, the President, Food Retailers, Dynamic Pricing, Surveillance Data, and Collective Bargaining Agreements, Protection from Predatory Pricing Act, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 387 is an administration bill that, as amended, prohibits a food retailer or a third-party delivery service provider from using personal data or engaging in dynamic pricing to increase the price of a good or service. The bill defines dynamic pricing as a discriminatory practice of offering or setting a personalized price for a good or service that is specific to a consumer based on collected or purchased based on the consumer's personal data, regardless of whether the seller collected or purchased the personal data. The bill prohibits the use of protected class data in a manner that has the effect of withholding or denying from a consumer an accommodation, an advantage, or a privilege provided to others. Finally, a violation of the bill is an unfair, abusive, or deceptive trade practice under the Maryland Consumer Protection Act and subject to the civil penalty provisions of the Act. 2 amendments. Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 alters the bill as described. establishes a right to cure, and establishes certain exceptions. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, recognize Senator from District 7.
Thank you, Mr. Will the floor leader yield
Questions for the floor leader? Senator may proceed.
Thanks. I know the bill's been amended, but I remember when it originally came in, one of the ideas was I don't think the price could change within 24 hours. And having been in retail myself, I know a lot of times I'd get product in a couple times a day, prices would change. How does this handle with regards to what you as the retailer, with regards to what you pay, your wholesale price? If that changes, can you reflect that in your retail price?
Are you asking 24 hours?
Within 24 hours?
Within 24 hours? You can't increase in 24 hours. So the price can't increase. It could decrease if you had a better price from your wholesaler.
But like, for instance, I have a farm supply store. We sell salt. So in the wintertime, we're getting a snowstorm, and I'm ordering salt in by the trailer load, and it's going out. And I got one trailer that came in, and I don't know, we'll say it's $2.99 a bag from this wholesale, and I put my markup on it. Same margin as always. I'm not changing my margin at all. I'm just basing off my wholesale price. Am I stuck keeping it at that wholesale, at my retail price, depending on within the 24 hours?
Well, actually, we took out the 24 hours. Yeah, we've taken the 24 hours out.
Okay, so
the whole idea of this is the dynamic pricing based on buyers. If they buy more and you retailer increase the price because the demand is greater, that's what we're trying to avoid.
So it has nothing to do with the wholesale price, what I'm paying for.
Wholesale price is not mentioned in the bill.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, question remains on the 2 committee amendments. Any further discussion of the amendments? Committee amendments. Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 387 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 389, the President, Land Use Transit-Oriented Development Alterations, Maryland Transit and Housing Opportunity Act, favorable with 5 amendments.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the Committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 389 is an administration bill that is amended, makes several changes to state law related to transit-oriented development. In general, the bill authorized the Maryland Department of Transportation to lead development and planning for projects of land that is contiguous to certain rail transit stations and owned by the state, Baltimore City, or WMATA. The bill also authorizes the designation of a TLD as an enterprise zone, restricts local and land use authority for TLD projects, and generally requires that excise taxes and impact fees be collected at the end of a project as specified. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 requires local approval before designating the TLD as an enterprise zone, defines what an adequate parking study is, and allows the imposition of minimum off-street parking restrictions under certain circumstances and parking study is completed. Strikes a scoring preference related to the project labor agreements and establishes that an excise tax and impact fee provisions are contingent upon the failure of the Maryland Housing Certainty Act. I move the amendment to the adoption of favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 5 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 5 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 389 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 753, Senator Kramer, Fiduciary Institutions, Exploitation of Seniors and Vulnerable Adults Protections, Required Referral, Vulnerable Adult Banking Protection Act.
Recognized Senator from Montgomery County is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill is about doing our best to protect our senior and vulnerable residents in the state from financial exploitation. Senate Bill 753 authorizes a fiduciary institution to delay or deny disbursement from an account of a senior or vulnerable adult if the fiduciary institution reasonably suspects the disbursement will result in the financial exploitation of an eligible adult. It includes notification requirements and provisions for the extension and termination of the delayed payments. There are no amendments. There is no fiscal impact. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. The bill passed the committee with a unanimous favorable vote. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 753 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Senators, just a quick point of order. We had to give out a temporary pass today, and we have, a real concern. We have some individuals that are doing an apprenticeship for journalism. There's some real muckrakers. We have AJ and Sam Sears who are joining us here today. So they have temporary press passes. They're here on the floor. We said they could join us. So we welcome them to the Senate. Just be careful what you say around them, all right? Be careful what you say. Yeah. That's right. That's right. All right. Next, we've got Committee on Finance. This is report number 27. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 469, Senator Hayes, Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund Affordability Purpose of Fund and Authorized Program. Favorable 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 469, as amended, authorized the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund to establish an affordability program. There are 2 amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters the allocation percentage of an assessment issued by the fund and establishes requirements and limitations for the affordability program authorized under the bill. I move the amendments and adoption of favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. The chair appears to have an amendment.
I do, thank you.
Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment is very simple. It just adds a 2-year sunset on the bill.
All right, 2-year sunset from the committee. Any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 469 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 608, Senator Mouts, Maryland Medical Assistance Plan and Health Insurance Pharmacogenic Testing Required Coverage. Favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 608, as amended, requires certain insurers, nonprofit health and self-service plans, health maintenance organizations, and Medicaid to provide coverage for single-gene and multi-gene pharmacogenomic testing under specified circumstances. There are 2 amendments. Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 strikes certain provisions of the bill and establishes certain criteria for the coverage of pharmacogenomic testing. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 608 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 626, Senator Lamb, Certificates of Birth, License, and Identification Cards, Sex Designation, Birth Certificate Modernization Act. Favorable.
Recognizing the senator from the 12th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 626 repeals the requirement that a licensed healthcare practitioner determine that an individual's sex designation should be changed for the purposes of issuing a new birth certificate. Instead, an individual or their parent, guardian, or legal representative must make a written request under penalty of perjury to the Maryland Department of Health for a new birth certificate with a sex designation that differs from the original birth certificate. When issuing a new birth certificate, the Secretary of Health must allow an individual to designate the sex of the individual as male, female, or unspecified, or another, and the Secretary must ensure that for an individual whose birth certificate designates the sex of the individual as unspecified or other, the new birth certificate displays an X in the location that indicates the individual's sex. The bill alters the sex designation option of other to another on an application for a license, identification card, or moped operator's permit. Furthermore, the bill alters provisions regarding a new birth certificate issued due to a name change of a parent listed on a birth certificate and makes other technical changes. There are no amendments. Move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Recognize Senator from District 6 on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just looking at this bill, I understand it doesn't have any amendments or anything like that, but I'd like to look at that for maybe possible amendments. If it's possible, Mr. President, could we special order it until maybe the next session, if that's okay?
Sure, it's the next session. If there are others that want amendments, please work on getting amendments.
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
No
President.
objections, so long as we're going to move it along. So
Thank you, sir.
If there's amendments, please make sure we have them. All right. Any objections from the floor? Without objection, so ordered. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 739, Senator Kramer, Climate Change, Homeowners Insurance, and Emergency Management Study, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 739 is about preparedness, responsibility, and facing reality. Across the country, climate change is undeniably driving more frequent and severe disasters, flooding, storms, and extreme weather that are already reshaping property risk and the insurance marketplace. At the very same time this is occurring, the federal government is stepping back from its historic role in disaster response. We are seeing that shift in real time. The Trump administration is reducing and even eliminating the Federal Emergency Management Agency's role and pushing more responsibility onto states. The consequences are not theoretical, they are already here. Just last year, devastating floods hit Western Maryland. FEMA itself validated more than $33 million in damage. Yet, the Trump administration denied disaster aid, leaving Allegheny and Garrett counties to recover on their own. The federal government simply walked away. Colleagues, that is the future we must plan for. The bill before you creates a thoughtful, data-driven study to examine how climate change is altering risk across our state, how insurance markets are responding or failing to respond, and how states must adapt policy, funding, and regulatory frameworks in a world where federal disaster aid can no longer be assumed. Mr. President, there is one amendment. The amendment adds a representative of the Independent Insurance Agents of Maryland to the list of individuals conducting the study. I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, recognize the senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I need to correct the floor leader, if I may. Allegheny County is correct. We were denied the $33 million. However, Allegheny County does not have to stand alone. The Moore administration did put in $11 million for that, plus another $1 million for the library. So it's $12 million. We're not standing alone. Thank you, Governor Moore. Thank you to this body that have then approved that in the budget as well. And on top of that, we are able to put in budget language for Georges Creek that if a flood does occur again, which it probably will, it dictates coordination on how we're going to work with the state, the locals, to mitigate and do a better, not better job, but to improve for the residents of Allegheny County. So I wanted to say I have to correct you, Mr. President. But it's a good way, correct, and thank this body for everything that they have done for the residents of Allegheny County, especially along Georges Creek. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for pointing that out. All right, on the amendment, discussion on the amendment. Recognize the minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. While we're on corrections, there's actually two amendments that are on here. one that does deal with adding a representative, but one also, I think, addressed the fiscal note on how this study would be paid for. And again, we're going back to the piggy bank that we've been able to go to so often. The Strategic Energy Investment Fund will be ponying up $150,000 in order to pay for this. Some may say that it is an appropriate use since we're looking at climate change. But in a quick question, if the floor leader would just yield for one question, please.
Senator may proceed.
As we're doing this study on the effects of climate change, will the University of Maryland also be looking at the policies that we've implemented here in Annapolis and their effects on climate change? I think, we've spent, in the $3 billion range with all the different policies with respect to energy policies, where we are with renewables and trying to clean up things, all those goals that we've heard about. Will this study look at that as well too to make sure that that's been an appropriate use of ratepayer and taxpayer dollars?
I don't believe that it is the intention of this legislation to have the university look into the fine work that we have been doing here in the Maryland General Assembly to push back against the climate deniers who are living in a bubble and somehow don't see what is happening all around us. Every time you turn on your television, you're witnessing horrific flooding, hurricanes, tornado seasons, droughts in the West, in the Midwest, fires burning through the West, all of it related to climate change. And this body has been doing an outstanding job to fulfill its role to address that, but I do not believe that is going to be part of this study. This study is to look at what do we do where we have found ourselves in a situation like Allegheny County, where the federal government completely abandoned the residents of Allegheny, and yes, thank goodness, Governor Moore stepped up to the plate and did the right thing to help those residents recover from those storms. And this bill will look at how do we continue to do that without the federal government's support. We're now on our own, and we have to determine how we're going to continue to do that. The very, very small fiscal note that, by the way, comes from CEF, which is exactly what the CEF fund is for, this exact kind of expenditure is, I think, wonderful that the university system said they will do this study. And it also relates to keeping our businesses and our residents able to have insurance. We have found that there are times when the residents on the eastern shore of our state and along the Atlantic coast have not been able to find insurance. So for those of us who actually believe in the climate change that is happening all around us, we're doing our best to support those people along Maryland's coastlines and throughout the state.
Well, thank you very much, Floor Leader. I can assure you the people of the Eastern Shore are very thankful for the legislation that has been put in here over the last number of years with the growing proliferation of solar panels that are just helping this exact issue that you have here. I would expect, though, when you're talking about all those severe weather events that you've talked about and how they're being caused, that, again, the billions of dollars that we've spent on climate change initiatives would have had some effect. Is that saying that these weather events are therefore less severe because of all the efforts that we've made, or was the expectation when we went into these policies that they would eliminate and stop or maybe reverse climate change? You know what the goal has been and why we're in the position of having to now study this?
This bill offers no commentary whatsoever on the subject of the climate crisis itself beyond the effects it is having on the insurance market and protecting, pardon me, our homeowners and businesses so that they can continue to be insured in this terrible time of climate crisis that is before us, and to figure out how we as a state are going to be able to adjust to being abandoned by the federal government in what the federal government has historically and responsibly done to support the states when there's disasters.
You've also
and this bill does not address anything beyond that.
You also did mention there's been an abandonment of insurance companies as well too, not just the federal government. So this is to look at when insurance companies decide to pull out of a market, why they've done that. Does this do anything to bring those insurance companies back? You know, when this study is completed, is that the intention to make sure that customers on the lower Eastern Shore have competition from insurance companies, that there's more than one that can deal with these weather-related events and floods of that nature?
And thank you for that question. In point of fact, the Maryland Insurance Administration not only supports this legislation, they came in and testified at the bill hearing in support of it because of the importance and relevance of having a clear understanding of what is affecting the marketplace so that we can, in fact, protect homeowners on our coastlines, in Ocean City, on the Eastern Shore, and throughout the state, so that they don't suddenly find an inability to have insurance when we know the climate crisis is creating these disasters at an unprecedented rate, and then they are left having to absorb the cost themselves, or an inability to get a mortgage, as lenders are not going to finance a home where they don't have property and casualty insurance. Right. So this is a look at how we are going to ensure the very best of our residents going forward in this changing climate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Floor Leader. I appreciate the comments on how the insurance market gets rolled into this, and I think that's why many of us did think that the concept of that alone was good, and I appreciate your comments forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Any further discussion of the amendment? If not, any objections to the amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objection? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 739 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 807, Senator Bailey, alcoholic beverages Class 8 farm brewery and Class 10 farm distillery licenses, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the senator from District 8 is the floor leader.
Thanks, Mr. President. Senate Bill 807 establishes a statewide Class 10 farm distillery license that may be issued by the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission only to a holder of a Class 8 farm brewery license. The bill adds, modifies, and repeals provisions related to a Class 8 farm brewery license consistent with a Class 10 farm distillery license, and modifies provisions related to additional licenses. There are 2 amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 limits the zoning exemptions in the bill and restores repealed language authorizing Class 8 farm breweries to sell or serve certain food items. It also removes the provision authorizing a Class 10 farm distillery to serve products manufactured by another manufacturer, and authorizing a Class 8 farm brewery to sell beer produced by another manufacturer. I move the amendments and in the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, recognize senator from the 29th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to ask for a special order till the next session for a purpose of amendment.
All right. Senators move to special order. Any objections?
No objection.
No objections. Without objection, the bill and the amendments will be special ordered to the appropriate time to the next session. All right. We have a special
Mr.
order.
President.
Oh, yes. Recognize the chair of the Ethics Committee.
Thank you very much. Members of Ethics, we're going to meet over in the Silver Room, so if you please leave the floor.
All right. Ethics to the Silver Room. All right, we have Special Order Calendar 49. I think we have the amendment ready for this one. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 818, Senator Hayes, State Center Development Contract Plan Requirements and Advisory Group. The bill is on second reading and open to amendment.
Recognizing the Chair of Budget and Tax.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh, we have an amendment. That's
yeah,
right.
well,
Question-
first off, I move to reconsider the vote by which the committee amendments were adopted.
I think we are okay, actually. I think we brought it back before and then we held it. So.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. So I think we're ready and
Already.
open for an amendment. I know.
Okay. I have an amendment.
Senator has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Okay. Wait a second. Okay. It's substitute.
Okay.
Okay.
I think maybe spoke too soon. So if the senator could repeat the motion.
Yes, I'd like to move to reconsider the vote by which the committee amendments were adopted.
Senators move to reconsider the vote by which the amendments were adopted. Are there any objections to the senator's motion? Without objection, the motion carries.
I'd like to move to withdraw the committee amendments.
Senators move to withdraw the committee amendments. Any objections? Without objection, the amendments are withdrawn.
And now I'd like to offer substitute committee amendments and move favorable on the substitute committee amendments. The committee amendments, the new ones, this is just to clarify something that was a miscommunication, and ultimately it just changes the membership of an advisory group.
All right, excellent. So the chair's moved to amend the bill with substitute amendments. Are there any discussion of the amendments? Any objections? Without objection, the substitute amendments are adopted. Question is now on the favorable report as amended with the substitute amendments. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 818 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Excellent. All right. Let's stick with budget and tax while we're there. We'll go to report number 13. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 262, Senator Simon Eyre, Income Tax Subtraction Modification for Classroom Supplies Purchased by Teachers, Alteration, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. As just was stated, expands the eligibility of income tax subtraction modification for educator expenses. There are 2 amendments. Number 1, adds sponsors and makes changes to the purpose paragraph. Number 2, clarifies the eligibility for subtraction modification. Move adoption of 2 amendments in the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 amendments are adopted. Questions on the amended report? Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 262 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 607, Senator McCray, Income Tax Subtraction Modification for Public Safety Retirement Income Amount, favorable, 1 amendment.
Recognize the chair of the committee.
If I could special order this to the end of the...
30 minutes.
30 minutes?
30 minutes.
Great.
Any objections to special order for 30 minutes? Without objection, bill will be special ordered for the 30 minutes. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 673, Senator A. Washington, State Procurement, Apprenticeship Program, Accountability and Completion, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is designed to recognize that we want apprenticeships to lead to careers, and having folks complete apprenticeship programs is important. The bill basically, as it came in, applied a rule in state procurements involving construction that were a little confusing, frankly. And so the proponents worked with the opponents, meaning the union and the non-union apprenticeship programs, and adopted and we adopted amendments that they worked on with the State Department of Labor. And so with that, there was no opposition in the industry. There are two amendments. One is technical to the purpose paragraph, and the second amendment does the clarification that I mentioned. Move the amendments and the favorable report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 673 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 766, Senator Zucker, Taxes Whistleblower Reward Program expansion, favorable with two amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 766 just expands the taxes that are eligible under the whistleblower program. We've worked very closely with the Comptroller's Office. There are two committee amendments. The first amendment changes the title and purpose paragraph. The second amendment makes the applicability of the act retroactive under the specified circumstances, make clarifying changes to the bill. I'd move the two committee amendments and adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 766 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 805, Senator Heddleman, Income Tax, Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit Alterations, favorable.
Recognizing the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 805 responds to what's happening at the federal level with many of our student loan tax issues. And so this bill modifies the debt relief tax credit by authorizing MHEC to grant an extension period within which an individual must use the credit for repayment of eligible student loan debt. By October 1st, MHEC has to adopt the procedures and how folks can apply for such a waiver, and it also modifies provisions relating to the credit recapture so that if they don't use it, they don't have to repay the entire amount, just the amount that is owed. The bill takes effect July 1 and applies to tax year 2026 and beyond. There are no committee amendments. Move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 805 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 980, Senator Saline, Property Tax Credit for Dwelling House or of Disabled Veterans and Surviving Spouses, alterations, favorable with two amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, Senate Bill 980 repeals the current income limitation and disability rating percentage used to establish eligibility for local option property tax credits for disabled veterans and their surviving spouse. Instead, the amended bill, the county and municipality corporation provides the eligibility criteria. There's two amendments, Mr. President. The first is technical. The second is an amendment that amends the bill to authorize counties, municipality corporations to provide the eligibility criteria as previously described. I move adoption of the two amendments in the favorable report, Mr. President.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments in the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 980 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill. Oh, that's the end of the calendar, isn't it? No next bill. Is Triple E here? Who's missing the most? Let's do Triple E. Okay. All right, let's go to Triple E. If there are any of the Ethics Committee members that are missing, we'll just move theirs till when they return back. So let's go to Education, Energy, and the Environment, report number 21. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 159, Senator A. Washington, Emergency Medical Services, Vehicles and Ambulances, Required Suppliers, Reviews, and Complaints, favorable two amendments.
Recognizing the senator from the 27th as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 159, Emergency Medical Services, Vehicle and Ambulance, Required Supplies, Reviews, and Complaints. Favorable with two amendments. As amended, the bill requires the Executive Director of the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services System to coordinate the minimum equipment, supplies, and medication including those needed for the neonatal care to be available on emergency medical services vehicle with the federal, state, and county government. 2 amendments. The first amendment is technical. The second amendment strikes requirement for a county and municipal to operate or contract EMS to conduct quarterly reviews of ambulance performance data, and each county to establish and maintain certain formal complaint systems. There's no impact to the fiscal note. It was unanimous in committee. I move the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 159 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 420, Senator M. Washington, Public Institutions of Higher Education, Pregnant and Parenting Students, Plan and Reporting. Favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 420 addresses a gap in how we support student parents across Maryland's public higher education system. Current law requires that 4-year institutions adopt and support plans for pregnant and parenting students, and that needs to be consistent with Title IX. However, we did not require any reporting on that, a collection of data on that, so that we can understand the efficacy of it. So we currently don't have any good data about how many students are being served and what challenges these parenting and pregnant students face. So there are 2 committee amendments. One is technical. The second amendment makes several clarifying changes, and it adjusts the reporting timeline from August to October. It refines the data collection requirements, and it removes a provision regarding adoption services referrals. I move from the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. The report passed 10-1 in the committee.
All right. Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 420 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 529, Senator Harris, Southern Maryland Early College Teacher Pathway Program and Program Workshop Establishment. Favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 529, Southern Maryland Early College Teacher Pathway Program and Program Work Group Establishments. Favorable with 2 amendments. This bill established the Southern Maryland Early College Teacher Pathway Program as a regional pilot program in Calvert, Charles, and St. Mary's County to create a structural, credit-bearing, tuition-free early college pathway for high school students to begin preparation for teaching careers. The Maryland State Department of Education, in consultation with the Maryland Higher Education Commission, must administer and implement the program following development by the University System of Maryland. Program students are considered dual enrolled and may not be charged tuition or mandatory fees. USM must develop the program, convene a work group, and report by June 30th, 2029 on the implementation and any legislative or regulatory changes needed. There are 2 amendments. First amendment is technical. The second amendment strikes provision established in the program, modifies the requirement of the work group to require the development of the recommendation for the operation and administration of the program, adds members to the work group, requires a certain report be submitted to certain committees of the General Assembly, requires a mandatory appropriation of $120K instead of $250,000 in fiscal year 28 and 29 in the state budget, and terminates the bill in 4 years. So the fiscal impact is only $125,000 in fiscal year 29 and fiscal year 28 with the amendment. I move the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 529 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 532, Senator Kagan, Higher Education Institutions Over-the-Counter Contraception Access and Reporting, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, in 2023, our former colleague, now head of the Maryland Commission for Women, Ariana Kelly, passed a law that requires there to be easy access on college campuses, on our four-year college campuses, for over-the-counter contraception. The next year, we expanded that to two-year community colleges. But the two sets of requirements were not the same. So this is basically just making them aligned, requiring that the report be submitted consistently every year by September 1st. All of the higher ed institutions will report the use, and as amended, disaggregated. We will be given, starting this October, a report as for the use of the various kinds of contraception. So move adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, recognize the minority whip.
Just a quick question on this.
Senator may proceed.
What's the reason for us needing to know? The state is not providing this contraception, correct?
Correct.
So why do we need to know the business of how many people are accessing over-the-counter contraception at, Hagerstown Community College or Montgomery College?
I think it's about transparency and information. It can guide our policies, and frankly, we can choose to ignore it or choose to have it inform our work.
Is there a fiscal impact to this?
There's not.
To the state?
To the state.
Okay, Mr. President, I'd actually like to see if I could have I'd like to ask this to lie over under the rule.
Senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendment will lie over under the rule. Clerk will read the next bill. Is there another bill?
Senate Bill 597, Senator Hester, Higher Education Maryland Artificial Intelligence Partnership, favorable with 4 amendments.
Recognize the chair of the committee.
Yeah, well, the sponsor and floor leader is in the back room on the ethics. It's a fairly lengthy floor report. I could read it if there's some questions. Then maybe could special order, or we could special order it to the end of the calendar.
You want to do 30 minutes, Senator? Or?
Yeah. Okay. Why don't we do that?
Okay.
I would say, with respect to members of the ethics committee, because there's, I think, some more bills in that category in the next calendar as well. I think that makes sense.
Perfect. All right. The chair's moved to special order the bill for 30 minutes. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right. We will go to report number 22. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 612, Talbot County Senators, Talbot County Public Schools, School Schedule Options, favorable with 2 amendments.
Similar issue?
I think we got the same issue with
all right.
sponsor and floor leader. Although it's a local bill, so perhaps, okay, why don't we do the same? 30-minute special order.
All right, Senators, move to special order the bill for 30 minutes. When the Ethics Committee comes back, we'll take it right back up. So any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 672, Senator A. Washington, Prince George's County, expanding access to early childhood education and child care, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the senator from the 23rd as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill requires the Maryland State Department of Education to develop an implementation and financing plan to expand access to high-quality early childhood education and child care in Prince George's County for children from birth through 3 years of age. MSDE must consult with Prince George's County and relevant state agencies. The plan must include an analysis of the cost to parents, the county, and the state, the workforce needs of early childhood education and child care providers to expand access, the capacity of early childhood education and child care providers to serve more children, and additional county and state revenue options to expand the access. By December 1st, 2026, MSDE must submit the plan to the Governor, General Assembly, and members of Prince George's County delegation of the General Assembly. There's one committee amendment, it's technical. Second amendment strikes the State Department of Education from the bill and substitutes Prince George's County government. There's no fiscal impact to the state. I move adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 672 is hereby ordered, printed for third reading. No pages, nothing. I didn't get anything. No? All right. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 810, Senator King, Public Schools, School Security Personnel, Immigration Investigation and Enforcement, favorable 5 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from the 27th as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 810, Public Schools, School Security Personnel, Immigration Investigation and Enforcement. Favorable with 5 amendments. This bill prohibits public school security personnel from being used at public school for the purpose of or otherwise engaging in federal immigration investigation or enforcement functions under the 287G of the Federal Immigration and Nationality Act, or producing or sharing information or a document pertaining to student educational records or employee personnel records or any other information about or from a student, a public school employee, or a student or a public school employee family or household for the purposes of federal immigration investigation or enforcement. Public school security personnel must immediately contact the county superintendent and legal counsel for the local school system if presented with a valid judicial warrant, judicial subpoena, or a legal order for the production of information or the document pertaining to student educational records or employee personnel records or any other information about or from a student. There are 5 amendments. Amendment 1 is technical and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 repeals the definition of federal law enforcement officer and defines the term judicial officer and substitute the term for the purpose of describing what powers a judicial officer may exercise in the state, requires public school personnel to notify a county superintendent or the county superintendent designee if the individual receives notice of immigration enforcement at a school. Amendment number 3 is technical. Amendment number 4 expands the definition of sensitive location related to the public school to include designated school bus or stop or a certain school vehicle and adds certain location that distributes food to individuals in need. Requires the Attorney General to update certain guidelines related to sensitive location and immigration enforcement as defined in the bill, and requires public schools, public libraries, and units of the executive branch of state and local government to implement and update specified policies. And amendment number 5 makes the act an emergency bill. There's no fiscal impact. I move the adoption of the 5 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 5 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, recognize the senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could the floor leader rise for some questions?
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. Was there any data presented in committee that shows that this is happening?
No.
Could you remind me the reason for this bill then? If there was not occurring.
Well, we didn't say it wasn't occurring. You asked, was there data?
Yeah, was there data?
Two
Right.
totally different things.
Well, technically correct. Okay. But in the testimony that for this bill, did they give any evidence that this was occurring, or was this a hypothetical?
Right. So the actual testimony, it was the concern about, there was concerns about the sensitive locations and about federal officers coming to the schools.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the 5 amendments, recognize the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. President. Would the floor leader yield for a quick moment?
Absolutely.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. It's unfortunate that the sponsor of the bill isn't here, but I do remember her sharing a story. I don't remember whether she shared it in committee or elsewhere, but she talked about ICE agents waiting at a bus stop when kids were getting off a bus, disembarking from a bus after the day at school, and arresting a family. I think they arrested the parents and left the kids, young kids, without their parents. That should not happen, and this bill will help address that so that that kind of action cannot be taken. Do you remember that, Senator?
I do recall that. Yes, Senator, I do recall that.
Thank you. So I'm not sure it's exactly in keeping with the good senator from District 1's question, but it's at least, it has happened. I can also say that, yeah, that's well. So on behalf of the senator from District 39, thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see if are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? Senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. As a follow-up for that story that was shared in committee, was that in Maryland?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right. Recognize the minority whip.
Mr. President, if I could ask the floor leader just one follow-up.
Senator may proceed.
Will this bill keep, if that did indeed happen and that's all the context for it, sometimes we hear stories and we don't get the entire context, but if that did indeed happen and that kind of thing does happen, would this bill stop it from happening?
This bill, yes, it does. It puts guardrails in place.
So it will stop ICE from, in a public sidewalk, carrying out enforcement mechanisms?
It makes a school bus stop part of the sensitive locations.
Okay. So ICE will observe that?
It's in our state laws, if passed.
Okay. We've been having some discussion about that. I don't want anybody getting picked up at a school bus stop. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair question. I will say we have in some of our jurisdictions, we have public buses that kids ride on. There could be a school bus stop that's next to something that ICE is operating in or at, or any federal agency it comes to. So I don't quite know how we would separate. I think what I'd like to do, Mr. President, is have this bill and the amendments allowed under the rule, and just be sure we've got the language tightened up.
All right, the senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendment will lie over under the rule. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 904, Senator Zucker, Education, Public Schools, Service Contracts, and Professional Development, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from the 41st as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill requires MSDE to design and develop a new system of paid in-person professional development for para-educators and other education support professionals, and to issue guidance to local boards. There are 2 committee amendments. The first one is technical, and the second one strikes the provisions of the bill regarding service contracts. The fiscal impact is moderate due to the amendments, and I move adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 904 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 957, Senator Guile, Education Career Ladder National Board Certification, Associated Salary Increases, favorable 2 amendments.
Mr. President.
Yes, recognize the senator from Anne Arundel as the floor leader.
Thank you. This bill fixes a technical inequity in the teacher certification process. The bill establishes that teachers who hold a certain 10-year National Board Certification, an NBC, awarded on or before December 31st, 2021 are eligible for salary increases associated with the renewal and maintenance of a certification under the state's career ladder framework. The bill specifies the salary increases applicable to renewal and maintenance of a 10-year NBC. The bill applies retroactively to teacher salaries associated with the career ladder for teachers holding an NBC on or before July 2026. There are 2 amendments. The first is technical. The second is clarifies terminology and clarifies that teachers holding an NBC subject to a 10-year renewal period qualify for the salary increases on the same schedule as teachers holding an NBC subject to a 5-year maintenance of certification requirement. I move the adoption of the favorable committee and amendments.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 957 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 968, Senator Gallion, Education School Bus Fire Safety Standards, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the chair of the committee as the floor
Can we
leader.
put this on that 30-minute special order category of bills?
On the 30-minute special, it's not the blue light special, it's the 30-minute special. All right, any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Does that one, clerk will read the next bill. Oh no, is the next one just withdrawn? It is. All right, let's go to 23. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 130, Senator Henson, Environment Water Individual Unit Meters, favorable 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from the 27th is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 130, Environment Water Individual Unit Meters, is favorable with 2 amendments. As amended, Senate Bill 130 authorized the installation of individual water submeters located in certain apartment houses and mobile home parks, subject to specified accuracy, record keeping, billing, and complaint resolution requirements. Among other provisions, an owner or agent that uses the submeter to provide bulk water service is prohibited from imposing any water or sewage costs on a unit other than actual charges imposed by the water service provider, or 2, collecting a monthly service charge of more than $1 per unit per month. This is general to these requirements, mirroring existing requirements for gas and electric submeters. There are 2 committee amendments. The first amendment is technical. The second amendment alters the bill submeter requirements, tenant remedies, and requirements for landlords. There are no state impact, local impacts, and I ask that you move this bill in a favorable committee report and these 2 amendments.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 130 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 223, Chair Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, Maryland Energy Administration, Jane E. Lawton Conservation Loan Program, and Maryland Strategic Energy Investment Fund, favorable 2 amendments.
Recognizing the chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This departmental bill transfers the Jane E. Lawton Conservation Loan Program from the Maryland Energy Administration to the Maryland Clean Energy Center. Additionally, it alters MEA's annual reporting requirements for the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. Bill takes effect July 1, 2026. There are 2 amendments. The first is technical. The second allows the Maryland Clean Energy Center to hold and manage the Lawton program funds as the center does with all its other loan programs. This bill passed unanimously out of committee. With that, I'd move for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report, Mr. President.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 223 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 523, Senator M. Washington, Department of Environment, Water Resources, Protection of Vernal Pools, Wetlands Protection Act of 2026, favorable 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Happy spring, Mr. President.
Likewise.
Senate Bill 523,
Water
Water Resources Identification of Vernal Pools, has been substantially amended. As drafted, it set up or added vernal pools, which are pools that are seasonal and are regular water resources that are not currently identified under our existing regulatory framework. But as amended, the bill directs the Department of Natural Resources, in consultation with MDE, to create and maintain and identify a list of vernal pools in the state. It also requires that MDE train staff, that DNR train MDE staff to identify a vernal pool, identify vernal pools, and when the staff encounter these pools, to note them. So again, this is an inventory effort. It's not a new regulatory program, and both DNR and MDE indicate that they can implement this with existing resources. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 are these substantive changes that shift from the regulatory framework to the identifying list approach. I move for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, vernal pools are now to be categorized with Senate Bill 523 ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 625, Senator Feldman, Carbon Removal Technology and Practices, Regulations and Use of Funding, favorable 2 amendments.
Recognizing Chair of the Committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 625, which passed unanimously out of the committee, has the potential, Mr. President, to position Maryland at the forefront of one of the fastest growing industries in the world, the carbon removal industry. Carbon removal industry, allowing Maryland's local farmers to be the main beneficiaries of this technology in this industry. Mr. President, as introduced, the bill requires the Maryland Department of the Environment by January 1, 2028 to adopt regulations that govern the permitting of carbon removal technology and practices that are certified by an internationally recognized third-party certification body. Each state agency must use available funding sources to fund carbon removal projects that utilize certified carbon removal technology and practices. Bill takes effect July 1, 2026. There are 2 committee amendments. The first is technical. The second strikes the provisions of the bill relating to funding a carbon removal project and simply requires the Department of the Environment establish regulations for carbon capture, removal, and sequestration projects. With that, Mr. President, I mentioned earlier the bill passed unanimously out of committee, and I would move for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments, favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 625 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 632, Senator West, State Government, State Elected Officials, Protection of Personal Information, favorable 2 amendments.
Yeah, I would move to special order this for 30 minutes. The floor leader here has done a lot of homework on this one, and it's pretty involved, so I would move this into that 30-minute special order category.
All right, senators move to special order the bill for 30 minutes. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 754, Senator Emma Washington, Land Use, Preservation of Natural Resources, favorable.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 754, Land Use Preservation and Natural Resources, addresses an existing program, TDR program, which is a voluntary market-based land use tool that is currently authorized under Land Use Article 8. It works by separating the right to develop land from the right to own it. Counties can currently designate sending areas, receiving areas, and landowners in sending areas can sell their development rights to developers who wish to perhaps increase density in another area. What this bill does is that it explicitly specifies that these tools can be used for the preservation of land as well. So these tools have been in the past primarily used to manage and benefit in agricultural spaces. In other words, if there's agricultural space and an owner wishes to seek some value for their land, but they don't wish to develop it, they can, within a county program, have these credits. They can sell these credits, be reimbursed for the credits, and then the county can use the credits for any number of purposes. What this bill does is makes explicit that we can also use it to manage forests, wetlands, floodplains, and other habitat areas. And again, it doesn't create any additional regulatory framework. It's completely voluntary. And also, it really clarifies that individuals who own land have a option within the state to be able to preserve that land, but also have a way to be compensated for it. There are no committee amendments, and I move for the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 754 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 825, Senator Hester, Public Safety, Critical Infrastructure Protection, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the chair of the committee.
Move special order this bill for 30 minutes. Thank you, Mr.
Senators
President.
move to special order the bill. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Let's go to judicial proceedings. Let's see where we are here. This is report number 1717. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 202, Senator Folden, Police Discipline, Order to Show Cause, favorable 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 202, as amended, this bill authorizes a police officer to apply to a circuit court for an order that directs certain law enforcement agencies to show cause as specified. If the police officer is denied a right grant of the public safety article and not eligible to be remedied by a trial board, there are 2 amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes the bill and adds language as described in the short summary. Mr. President, I move the amended favorable report.
Floor leader moves to the adoptions of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report. Recognize the Senator from Prince George's.
Yeah, can we lay this over, please?
Senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendment will lie over under the rule. All right, clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 290, Senator McCray, Baltimore City Ordinance Enforcement, Amount of Fines and Penalties, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the Senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 290 repeals the current $1,000 cap for civil and criminal fines and penalties Baltimore City may impose for the violation of any ordinance, rule, or regulation established by the city as specified. There are 2 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes the provision of the bill raising the maximum specified penalties from $1,000 to $5,000. Move the committee amendments in the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 290 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 335, Senator Love, Human Relations, Discrimination in Housing, Income-Based Housing Subsidies, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, several years ago, we passed the HOME Act prohibiting housing discrimination based on source of income. And this is basically the HOME Act Part 2, closing a loophole that some landlords have found. So this bill prohibits, except as authorized under federal law, a landlord or residential rental property that uses financial information as part of a prospective tenant's rental application from refusing to rent to a prospective tenant who pays rent with the assistance of an income-based housing subsidy on the basis of the prospective tenant's income, credit score, lack of credit score, or adverse history as specified. The bill establishes such action as a discriminatory housing practice subject to enforcement by the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. A landlord that receives funding from a government entity, a quasi-governmental entity, or a nonprofit organization that requires income qualification for tenants in income-restricted rental units may collect financial information from a prospective tenant if the collection of such information is a condition of the funding. There are several amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 prohibits a landlord from using adverse credit history if it arose during a period when the tenant didn't have an income-based housing subsidy, if the period during which the tenant didn't have the subsidy is either confirmed by the applicant, voucher paperwork, documents provided by a housing authority, or a public housing authority in response to a request by a landlord. It also prohibits a landlord from requiring that a public housing authority verify the dates of housing subsidy for purposes of assessing the tenant's credit history. It permits a landlord to require verification of income for rent not covered by the subsidy using a ratio substantially equivalent to what is used for other tenants. It permits a landlord to refuse to rent to a tenant on the basis of any commercially reasonable and non-discriminatory use of a reference from a previous current landlord or a tenant's history of violating a lease, creating a nuisance, or damaging property. And finally, it requires that certain landlords offer the option of having positive rental payment history reported to a consumer reporting agency. Move the committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Recognize the minority whip on the amendments.
All I have to say is wow about that. That's a lot. I have a question for the floor leader, if you mind yielding. Thank you so much. So what here are you allowed to deny somebody for if this bill passes? Sounds like you can't deny anybody for anything.
Sure. So you can deny them, as I just said, if they can't. So you're allowed to do an income-based restriction so let me back up for a second. A tenant that's on a subsidy housing, that subsidy can provide anywhere from 70% to 100% of the rent. So if the tenant has to pay some portion of the rent, the landlord can look at their income to make sure that they can pay that portion of the rent. And if they can't, they can be denied. They can be denied based on a current landlord or a previous landlord's reference. They can be denied.
They can be. I misunderstood that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And on a history of violating a lease, creating a nuisance, damaging property, any of that. And then there's another piece about adverse credit history, and that if the landlord can tell when the tenant has had the subsidy, they can use the credit history from when they have the subsidy. So obviously, if you didn't have a subsidy, you're going to have adverse credit history, but once you have it, if you're not paying your rent, the landlord could use that. But if the landlord can't figure that out, then they can use all of the adverse credit history.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation. Is it your belief that we have a problem with access to housing in this state?
Yes, some of the stories that we have heard of landlords denying tenants who have subsidies are heartbreaking.
But we have a problem with access to housing, both rental and for purchase, correct? We're spending a lot of time on that this session. So we have a huge problem with access just to rental housing in general, not even to being turned down, just enough places for people to go, correct?
Sure.
Every session, we keep adding more and more things onto people who provide housing, more costs, more restrictions, and we wonder why we're having trouble with access to housing. So I'm concerned here. This is a very prescriptive bill, based on the sound of it to me, that we're engaging in a getting way into people's business, almost as if we're treating landlords like they're a government agent when they're not. Who is the government to tell people that they can't check someone's credit history if they're going to let them have their access to their property for a year or 2 years? I mean, I don't understand where we even, I know we already have broken through that. And I understand there have to be some obviously there should be protections, but in our state, we've gotten to the point where landlords are like this villain. We're treating everybody like a villain, and then we wonder why there's not enough investment, there's not enough rental property availability. Does this bill touch everybody that rents out property, or is it only like large apartments?
So this only, well, a couple of things. This bill only applies to landlords that have 5 or more units. So it's for the larger landlords. That's a standard split in our law. And second, only for those, it only applies when the tenant has a subsidy. And as to your other question, this is really trying to close a loophole in a law that we already passed. And that some landlords, not all, absolutely not all, but that some landlords have found a way. We said you cannot discriminate based on source of income. And they said, okay, we're going to look at the amount of the rent, and we're going to say the tenant has to be able to pay 3 times the amount of rent. Well, the tenant doesn't have to pay 3 times the amount of rent. The tenant may not have to pay any part of the rent because they have 100% subsidy. What we're saying here is if the tenant does have to pay a portion of the rent, you absolutely can verify that they can pay that. But you can't make it so that they have to pay 3 times the entire amount of the rent.
Okay, thank you for the answers on that. When a tenant is on 100%, are they responsible for a security deposit? Are they allowed? Are you allowed? Or is a land? I'm actually honestly, I don't know how it works. Are you allowed to take a security deposit from them? Obviously, we have rules about how you have to handle the security deposits in the state.
It's based on the federal rules, and I believe it's different for every tenant.
Okay, depending on what they can afford, probably, or what their particular maybe disability is. Okay. Part of the challenge with accepting vouchers, and a lot of landlords that I know and speak with, and by the way, when we say landlord, I know we think of some guy sitting in a high-rise somewhere collecting checks, but a lot of folks that have properties, even properties that are apartments, are investors that are small business people, or they've inherited a property and turned it into rental housing. A lot of folks that rent out a couple of houses or whatever, which I know you're going to say this bill doesn't impact yet. That's next year's bill maybe. But we treat them like they're all the monopoly money guy, and I just don't think. I think the problem with the challenge we have is when you rent to somebody on a voucher. A lot of the folks on vouchers, you get paid on time. People like that. They get the voucher from the government. So the landlords at times will like that. But there are people who are on vouchers that are a bit of a risky bet. There's a reason that they've had some challenges. And so they leave there are a lot of people who are on vouchers that will leave a property in a bad condition. That's not everybody, just like not every landlord's a villain. I'm just saying it's enough of a percentage that it's a concern. And does this bill provide any protection for a landlord that can they still look at somebody's criminal history? Can they look? You did say about a referral from a previous landlord. So if they talk to a previous landlord and they say, hey, this person trashed my apartment, they can still take that into account?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Mr. President, thank you very much. Thank you for the answers.
Yes, recognize the senator from the 23rd.
Yes, a couple questions, please.
Senator may proceed.
So this bill is only subject to voucher programs, subsidized housing, right?
Correct.
And you had mentioned 5 or more. If a landlord owns 5 or more, were those contiguous units, or could those be 5 separate townhouses?
It's what's in our current law. I'll get an answer for you. It's a federal law, and it's contiguous. It's multifamily.
More like apartment complexes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, senators. Senator make a motion.
I'll move the.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm sorry. Was there a motion? I missed it. Okay. All right. So the question remains on the two amendments. Sorry, I was trying to catch in and see where we were with folks coming back. on the two amendments. Any discussion on the two amendments? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 335 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Senator from the 37th.
Mr. President, I apologize to interrupt, but I just want to do a quick introduction, if that'd be okay.
Senator, may proceed.
I can't over my head. I've got eyes in the back of my head, but a distinguished veteran of this chamber, Senator Mathias, representing the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, has shown up here on the eve or the cusp of crossover. So I wanted to welcome Senator Mathias and give him a warm Senate welcome back to the chamber.
Great to see you, sir. Always welcome. Always welcome. Great to see you. All right. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 646, Senator Muse, Commission to examine the expungement law of Maryland. Favorable, 2 amendments.
Recognize the senator from the 26th is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill establishes the Commission to examine the expungement laws of Maryland to be staffed by the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy and my glasses. The Commission must examine the state's expungement laws and currently review comparable expungement laws and processes in other states. And 3, develop an alternative statutory scheme that provides a streamlined process and broader eligibility. The Commission must submit a report of its findings and recommendations to the General Assembly by December 31st, 2028. A member of this Commission may not receive compensation as a member of the Commission, but is entitled to reimbursement for expenses. The bill takes effect June 1, 2027, terminates June 30th, 2029. There are 2 committee amendments. The first is technical. The second alters the commission composition and the reporting and effective dates under the bill. Move favorable the bill and the amendments.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 464 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 483, Senator McKay, Criminal Procedure Automated Expungement Clean Slate Act of 2026, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 483. This bill requires that on or before July 1st, 2028, the Maryland Judiciary shields all cases which all cases are in the case that are technically eligible for expungement. Beginning August 1st, 2028, the Judiciary is required to identify all cases in which the charges all the charges in the case are newly technically eligible for expungement on a monthly basis and shield those cases as specified. Technically eligible for expungement means that based on the nature of the charge or the conviction and the relative time that has elapsed, a person would be eligible to file a petition for expungement under Title 10, Subtitle 1 of the Criminal Proceeding Article. There are 2 committee amendments. One is technical, and number 2 strikes the bill as adds provisions relating to shielding. Mr. President, I move the adoption of the favorable report with 2 amendments.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 483 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 524, Senator M. Washington, Juvenile Records Access, Baltimore City's Mayor's Office, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from the capital city is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill authorizes access to and confidential use of juvenile police records and court records by specified offices within the Baltimore City's Mayor's Office if the office is providing programs and services to a child who is the subject of the record. Before accessing such a record, the Mayor's Office must enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Juvenile Services and receive written consent from the child's parent or guardian. The bill sunsets after 5 years. educators. There are 2 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds the requirements of the mayor's office to enter into an MOU and obtain written consent before accessing records, and it sunsets the bill. There is no additional amendments. Move for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 524 is hereby ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 651, Senator Henson, Real Property Transfer on Death Deed Establishment, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill establishes the Maryland Transfer on Death Deed, TOD, into state law. The bill includes provisions relating to 1, the elements, recordation, and effects of the TOD deed, 2, the revocation of the TOD deed, 3, the effect of the transferor's death, 4, forms and informational documents for the TOD deed, 5, exemption of the TOD deed from recordation, taxes, and transfer fees, and then 6, interpretation and enforcement of the bill. The bill applies to a TOD deed made before, on, or after the bill's effective date by a transferor who dies on or after the bill's effective date. There are 2 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and is technical. Amendment number 2 provides that a TOD deed that designates multiple beneficiaries may transfer ownership of the property to beneficiaries under any form of tenancy indicated on the TOD deed, and if the TOD deed does not indicate a form of tenancy, the form of tenancy will be joint tenants with the right of survivorship. It also adds that an advertisement to the statutory form recommending consultation with a lawyer if there's a name change after the property was acquired, or the transferor wants to name multiple people. It also adds additional questions to the common questions section of the statutory form. Additionally, it permits a beneficiary to file in the land records a transfer on death deed notification form and provides a boilerplate statutory form. Move for adoption of the favorable committee report with amendments.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing a question on the bill? Yes, recognize the senator from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the floor leader yield, please?
Will the floor leader yield? Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Floor Leader. So if there's a mortgage on the property and the deed transfers on death, does the mortgage transfer on death?
No, the ownership, the deed would transfer ownership and title of the property, but the mortgage itself would transfer how any other mortgage is handled in an estate. So it would go to the estate. It would have to be settled in the estate like any other debt that's owed to the estate.
And if there's no money in the estate, then what happens to the mortgage?
The same way any other debt that can't be satisfied, presumably they would call in the lien. They would do whatever you do to satisfy any other outstanding debt on an estate.
So could still go into foreclosure?
The lien would travel with the property, so they would be able to still do that even though there was another record owner of the property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, Senate Bill 651 is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 661, Senator Love, wiretapping electronic surveillance, intercepted communications, admissibility of evidence, favorable 3 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 661, as amended, creates an exception under Section 10-402 of the Courts and Judicial Proceedings article and makes it lawful for a person to intercept a wire, oral, or electronic communication that is a recording of or is part of the recording of a commission or attempted commission of the following crimes against the person: 1, murder in any degree; 2, rape in any degree; and 3, assault in the first degree that is a domestically related crime as defined in 6-233 of the Criminal Procedure article. The bill provides a specified affirmative defense for a wiretap statute violation and provides for the admissibility of intercepted communications in criminal proceedings as specified. There are 3 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 adds sponsors to the bill so that the entire JPR committee is listed as sponsors. Amendment number 2 is technical. Amendment number 3 provides the exception, affirmative defense, and admissibility provisions as I just specified. Move the amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 661 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. All right, let's go back to some of these that were on that 30-minute hold. We'll start with Senate Bill 607 out of B&T. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 607, Senator McCray, income tax subtraction modification for public safety retirement income amount, favorable with 1 amendment.
Recognizing the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thanks, Mr. President. Senate Bill 607, as amended, increases the maximum value of the income tax subtraction modification for public safety employee retirement income from $15,000 to $20,000 by tax year 2030. The change is phased in over a 5-year period. There's 1 amendment which adds co-sponsors. Move adoption of the committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 607 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Let's go to start with Senate Bill 597. Clerk will
Mr.
read
President?
the bill. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
May I interrupt the proceedings for an introduction?
Senator may proceed.
I just looked up and saw my Chief of Staff and Legislative Aide, Gretchen Zekiel and Samantha Gray. Please give them a warm Senate welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you for your work. All right. Madam Clerk, please read the bill.
Senate Bill 597, Senator Hester, Higher Education, Maryland Artificial Intelligence Partnership, favorable with 4 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 597 is about growing the economy of the future. It sets up a statewide approach to artificial intelligence with a partnership within the University System of Maryland. The goal is simple: bring together our universities, our state agencies, and our workforce partners, so we're not working in silos, but instead moving in the same direction on artificial intelligence. The bill does a few things. First, the partnership will develop a strategic plan with clear goals, timelines, and metrics, including plans for regional technology hubs and an AI incubation lab. The bill also creates these technology extension hubs in partnership with the Department of Labor to help small businesses and workers access and use AI tools across the state. It also establishes a public service fellowship to give students hands-on experience in government. And finally, it also includes this AI incubation lab to help agencies responsibly test and adopt new tools. The bill passed unanimously. There are a couple of amendments. The first amendment strikes the Cyber Warrior Diversity Program and the Cybersecurity Public Service Scholarship from the bill. Amendment 3 modifies the duties of the partnership, modifies the requirements for a strategic plan, and a business plan and timeline for the development of the AI incubation lab, and an analysis of scholarship and fellowship needs to expand access and workforce experience in AI. Hold on, second page. The amendment also requires the partnership to establish the Maryland Department of Labor Extension hubs in strategic locations and modifies collaborations with the Department of Labor. It extends the date by which certain hubs are to be established in 3 regions, and it strikes a requirement to provide AIB skills training to individuals at no charge through certain methods. Amendment number 4 establishes the Public Service Fellowship in USM and provides that there is an AI incubation lab in USM subject to an MOU between USM and DBM, and strikes the duties of the lab. I move the adoption of the 4 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 4 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 4 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objection? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 597 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to 612. 612, clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 612, Talbot County Senators, Talbot County Public Schools, school schedule options, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the senator from the 35th as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill authorizes the Talbot County Board of Education to choose to operate all public schools in the county using a scheduling model that eliminates early dismissal days to allow for less than 180 school days if the minimal hours of attendance in the school year under state regulations are met. If the Talbot County Board uses a scheduling model that results in schools being open for fewer than 180 days, the board must offer rate adjustments to employees for lost wages. There are 2 committee amendments. The first amendment is technical. The second amendment alters the date certain reports are due by 1 year and delays the effective date of the bill until July 1st, 2027, with a termination date June 30th, 2029, and it also fixes a grammatical error. I'd like to move for adoption of the 2 committee amendments and a favorable report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 612 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to Senate Bill 968. 968. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 968, Senator Gallion, Education, School Bus, Fire Safety Standards, favorable 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill repeals the requirement that a school bus must be constructed with certain materials that meet criteria for seat upholstery fire block test established by the National School Transportation Specifications and Procedures, adopted at the most recent National Congress on School Transportation. There are 2 committee amendments. First is technical. The second exempts only the driver's seat of a school bus from the certain fire block materials requirement. I move for adoption of the 2 committee amendments and a favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any object? Oh, yes, recognize the senator from Baltimore County.
Quick question for the floor leader.
The floor leader yield. Senator may proceed.
Is there what's the reason for that exemption for the driver from the rest of the bus?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. So we've had an issue over the state with recruitment and retention of school bus drivers. A lot of the drivers are, in their 50s, 60s, getting age, and what's happening now is with the current driver seats, they're putting like cushions and blankets and stuff down to make it more comfortable for them, which that's technically not allowed. So this would address that, still lives up to that standard that I mentioned, and will hopefully help us retain our school bus drivers that are greatly needed.
Thank you for that explanation.
Sure thing.
All right. On the 2 amendments, any further discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 968 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to 632. 632. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 632, Senator West, State Government, State Elected Officials, Protection of Personal Information, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize Senator from District 9 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill is really sad. In July 2025, Minnesota residents Vance Bolter carried out a targeted attack on state lawmakers, shooting Senator John Hoffman and his wife and killing former House Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband in their homes. Bolter reportedly obtained personal details, including home addresses and family information, from public data brokers sites, and authorities later found a notebook listing dozens of more of those legislators. Many of us know some of those legislators or knew them. In particular, I know Representative Kristen Bonner, and she survived, and she came to testify in our committee. She left her house that morning with her 2 grandchildren at 7:45, and had she not left, the murderer rang her Ring doorbell less than half an hour later. And so I'm just thankful that she and her family is safe. But unfortunately, the point of this bill is that these serious risks that public officials face, and they're particularly strong risks when our sensitive personal information is so easily accessible. So what Senate Bill 632 does is it addresses the rise in these threats by doing 3 things. First, it establishes the elected officials' address confidentiality program to safeguard the personal information. It establishes the Office of State Elected Official Information Privacy within DLS. It also authorizes a protected individual to request that a government entity not publish their personal information from an existing publication. There are 2 committee amendments. The first one is technical. The second one authorizes the use of member states' supplied office funds to pay for the removal of information, and clarifies that the information required by the State Ethics Commission are exempt from the bill. It passed the committee unanimously, and I urge the adoption of the committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Yes, recognize the senator from District 6.
I just want to thank the sponsor of the bill doing this bill. I think it's important for all of us to be safe, whether we're home, we're here, or anywhere in the state, because this story is very serious. And I thank the senator that came here to testify. But I think I myself and everybody in here take this very seriously. We're here to do a job for our constituents. And at times things get out of hand. And it shouldn't be that way. And so I want to thank those that sponsored it. And I want to thank the good senator that he did something that was, I think, very not just bipartisan, but very achieving something that could maybe make a difference for all of us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the report as amended, any further discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 632 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. We have Senate Bill 825. 825, clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 825, Senator Hester, Public Safety, Critical Infrastructure Protection, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 825 is really about protecting the systems that Marylanders rely on every day: our energy, water, transportation, communications, and health care, which increasingly the cybersecurity, the information technology, and the operational technology are interconnected. And so what this bill does is it establishes the Critical Infrastructure Protection Branch within the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center to identify current and potential threats to the state's infrastructure and prioritize the state's critical infrastructure assets as specified. The executive director of the MCAC must appoint a chief critical infrastructure officer for the branch, and the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, in consultation with MCAC, must coordinate consequence management efforts and respond to an attack on the state's critical infrastructure. The Department of Information Technology, in consultation with MCAC, must allow the owner or operator of the critical infrastructure to become a member of the Maryland Information Sharing and Analysis Center. There are 2 committee amendments. The first one is technical. The second one adds the National Guard to the coordinating entities in the bill. It strikes several provisions that require the critical infrastructure officer to take action that would have required the branch to undertake action that would require additional personnel, and clarifies that this bill does not supersede any federal, state critical infrastructure policies or regulatory actions by the Public Service Commission, and therefore brings the bill's fiscal note down to 0. I urge the adoption of the committee's favorable committee report and move for the adoption of the committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 825 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. All right, let's go to some of these ones that are outstanding. We have layover calendar number 24. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 823, Senator Smith, Correctional Services Maryland Parole Commission members question as an adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable report.
All right, question is on the one committee amendment, recognizing the minority whip.
Mr. President, I think we want to adopt the committee amendments, and then I have an amendment.
All right, Senator has an amendment, but let's, on the committee amendments, any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Recognize the minority whip has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is actually a pretty big sea change. I think it kind of maybe was a little bit of under the radar just because we're flying through a lot of bills. But the governor's ability to appoint the parole commission is one of the big things a governor gets to do in pretty much any state. Has the responsibility of doing, and the governor stands before the voters, and one of the biggest issues that a governor will answer to, no matter who they are, what party they are, is who are you putting in key positions of leadership? Who are you putting in positions that affect things like education, health, transportation, but also public safety? And public safety and who maybe gets let out of jail, out of prison, might end up more on the front lines and front pages of the paper than anything else a governor might do their whole time in office. So the ability to appoint the parole commission has always been vested in the governor. The governor takes advice from his Secretary of Corrections, which makes sense, and probably can take advice from whoever he or she would like to take advice from. But we've never done something where we're taking away the ability of the governor to appoint. Now, this bill doesn't take away his ability to appoint, but what it does do is set up a committee or a commission, and he has to take a name from that commission. So a lot of us are familiar with judicial nominating commissions with circuit court and district court, and we've probably all experienced times where we felt very qualified people could not become a judge because the nominating commissions are so I don't want to say stacked, but they all come from, it tends to be a legal establishment, a community, a lot of good people on those nominating commissions, but there's been times we've had people who couldn't get a judgeship, and they'll run for it and win. They couldn't get a judgeship because the nominating commission just they're not the right cup of tea, but they could be really good. And so what this bill is doing right now is setting up a nominating commission rather than just having the governor select the parole commissioner. Now, the governor will be able to pick from names that they submit. I don't really know that I like the entire concept, period. We also heard that the governor has not taken, I guess, a position on this one or the other, the current governor or his administration. I also don't want this thing to be something that would come back and be vetoed, or maybe I do want it to be vetoed. I don't know, but well, either way, I don't think the body wants this bill to be vetoed. So I think one thing that concerned me was looking at the makeup of the commission and who gets put there. It says with the approval of, or it says the governor, with the advice and consent of the Senate. Oh, and by the way, of course, the nominees to the parole commission do come before us, so there is an additional check on the governor already. There's 47 of us here in the Senate. A very smart, good-looking, and august body. So I don't know that we need more layers than we already have, but if the bill is to proceed, the governor shall appoint the members of the commission from among nominees chosen by a panel consisting of, and the governor doesn't get to appoint this whole panel either, Executive Director of the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission, the Secretary of Public Safety and Correctional Services, which of course the governor does appoint that person, the Public Defender of Maryland, the President of the Maryland States Attorneys Association, which is not anybody appointed by the governor, although I think if you're going to have this, you should have them on there, but there's also 3 service providers from the fields of mental health, substance use treatment, vocational educational training, or community organizing, appointed by the governor, but the governor appoints those 3, so that's good. But then we have the President of the National Association of Social Workers, 3 members of the general public appointed by the governor, 1 prisoner's rights advocate, and 1 victim's rights advocate. Now, these are appointed by the governor here, so I do want to be fair, but the ones I just read off, National Association of Social Workers, general public, 1 prisoner's rights advocate, 1 victim's rights advocate, that is not someone who specializes in understanding prison and the reform and the reform of a person who's up for parole, it is not somebody who, it could very well be somebody who's not as qualified for this kind of position. So my suggestion, and by the way, I tend to be, I'm about victims' rights. So I'm lumping them in too, even though I'm saying I don't know that we want prisoners' rights or victims' rights advocates on a commission that's supposed to adjudicate whether they get parole or not. If it was a reform commission about prisons, that would be a different issue. This is about who gets to leave prison early. This is about people that get to leave prison early. So what I'd like to do with this amendment, Mr. President, I want to strike line 8 to line 15 of the reprint. So I'm taking out, the amendment takes out the National Association of Social Workers, 3 members of the general public, 1 prisoner's rights advocate, and 1 victim's rights advocate. It's an equal opportunity here. I'm taking out ones that are on sort of both sides of the divide, but I think it allows it to stay focused. It's still stacked correctly with 7 people. If you take these out, you still have 7 people. You still have the public defender. You have the State's Attorneys Association. You do have 3 service providers from the fields of mental health, substance use treatment, vocational educational training, etc. And you have the Department of Corrections and the Executive Director of the Training Commission. I think that would make this bill much better. It would sharpen the focus of this commission, and it would still give the governor a good bit of control, which I think is what we should do in who's on this commission. So, Mr. President, I would move my amendment and ask for the body's support.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the amendment. Let's hear from the, the maker of the amendment moves for the adoption of the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First, I appreciate you sharing the amendment with me beforehand, and I'd like to just correct a few things. Maryland is actually an outlier. We're one of only 4 states that the governor doesn't have that appointment power over the commissioners. Here in Maryland, the secretary makes those choices with the approval of the Judicial Nominations Committee. So we're an outlier. And in fact, I think Kansas is the only state that the secretary, besides Maryland, that the secretary makes those selections of those commissioners. But the reason why I'm asking the body to reject the amendment is because this list was well thought out to balance and weigh the interest of everyone that's associated with the criminal justice system, and to understand what that process looks like when the commissioners go forward to make these really critical public safety parole decisions. You've got a state's attorney, we took out the superintendent of schools with the will of the committee. We've got the president of the Association of Social Workers, 3 members of the public, 1 prisoner's rights advocate, 1 victim's rights advocate. It's a really balanced, thoughtful approach to this process, and so I would ask the body to resist the amendment.
All right, on the amendment, recognized Senator for District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to support the amendment. When I was in the House, I was on Appropriations and Public Safety Administration. We dealt with this, the members of it, and I really believe that what the committee has come up with is too broad, and I tend to believe that this amendment will actually narrow it and still get to the same conclusion of what the committee is trying to do. But I tend to believe that in this case, not putting everybody in the boat is a good idea.
All right, thank you, Senator. On the amendment, is there any further discussion of the amendment? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 28 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 823 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Let's go to Special Order Calendar 44. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 417, Senator Lamb, Labor and Employment Mandatory Meetings on Religious or Political Matters, Employee Attendance and Participation, Maryland Worker Freedom Act. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report.
All right, question before the body is on the favorable report. Any discussion? Any objections? Senator's amendment. Any objections to the favorable report? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Recognize the senator from the 35th has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment simply pushes back the implementation date for 1 year. I'd like to ask that the bill and amendment lay over under the rule.
The Senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendment will lie over under the rule. Let's go to Special Order Calendar 45. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 4, Senator Kagan, Charitable Organizations, Charitable Donation and Tax Exempt Status, Revocation, Keeping Charities Nonpartisan Act of 2026. Question is the adoption of the two committee amendments in the favorable report.
All right, question before the body is on the two committee amendments, the two committee amendments. Any discussion of the amendments? Any objection to the amendments? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Yes, Senator from District 6.
I wanted to just make a statement, Mr. President. I'm sorry I missed. I just passed that.
On the report?
On the report, yes, sir.
Senator may proceed on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Had an opportunity to look at this, and to me, Mr. President, there's certain bills that I believe that we do that makes a difference in our state. I believe there's things that we have a debate, we talk about them in detail. At times, they are amended. Sometimes we change them, and we change them for the better. Sometimes we change them, we just don't disagree. And then there's bills that I look into and I believe, is this really necessary? Is this really something that's going to benefit overall? And I, Mr. President, what I do more than anything, I balance it out. I see the good and the bad in the bills. And I say, is this a good bill or a bad bill? Or is this something that we need to really maybe even look into and study? And I think maybe this is a bill that possibly we can look into and maybe study and maybe see, is this a problem? Is this a real problem that we have here? And just saying that, Mr. President, I think this type of bill needs to be maybe looked into and studied and not moved forward. I think it's a little troubling that we're getting into things that I think could get us in the middle of the woods and we can get lost. And just saying that, Mr. President, if we could, I'd like to have a vote on the second reader of this to see if this bill will move forward. Mr. President, that's my request.
All right, Senators request a roll call vote on the favorable report. On the report, is there any discussion, further discussion? Recognize the minority whip. Recognize the Senator from the 23rd on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I did vote against this in committee, and my rationale is this. I don't think this bill is needed, and I think it's an attempt to stifle conversation that occurs in black churches. If it were not for people like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King's and the things that they brought to the attention, of the African American community, I probably wouldn't be standing here right now as a state senator. In addition, there was a consent decree that was offered up last year, the National Religious Broadcasters versus Billy Long in his official capacity as Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. And if you'll indulge me for a quick moment, the Johnson Amendment, which requires certain organizations, including churches, to refrain from participating or intervening in campaigns for public office as a condition of their nonprofit tax exempt status. This is what this was about. And the plaintiffs allege that the Johnson Amendment, facially as applied, violates their First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and free exercise of religion, their Fifth Amendment rights to due process of law and equal protection under the law, and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It goes further to say that when a house of worship in good faith speaks to its congregation through its customary channels of communication on matters of faith in connection with religious services concerning electoral politics viewed through the lens of religious faith, it neither participates nor intervenes in political campaign within the ordinary meaning of those words. To participate in political campaign is to take part in the political campaign, and to intervene in a political campaign is to interfere with the outcome of the political campaign. For many houses of worship, the exercise of their religious beliefs includes teaching or instructing their congregations regarding all aspects of life, including guidance concerning the impact of faith on the choices inherent in political politics. And it goes on to say, for these reasons, the Johnson Amendment does not reach speech by a house of worship to its congregation in connection with religious services through its customary channels of communications on matters of faith concerning electoral politics viewed through the lens of religious faith. And as a result, dismissal of all such claims with prejudice. And finally, it says, the founders envisioned a nation in which religious voices and views were integral to a vibrant public square, and in which religious people and institutions were free to practice their faith without fear of discrimination or retaliation by the federal government. The sponsor of the amendment had a quote by Raphael Warnock. I was visited by a pastor in my church. The book is called Politically Speaking: Why Politics Are Local to the Black Church. And I'll just quickly say that this book calls for a response in several specific areas. First, it's a call to the Black church to be aware of the political events and personalities that can have a negative impact on the lives of Black people. Second, it's a call to advocacy on behalf of issues and candidates that can have positive impact on Black communities. Third, it's a call to activism in which Black churches and Black preachers take an active role in politics, either as candidates for office themselves or in support of campaigns of those candidates that will represent the interests of Black people at the local, county, state, and federal level. I just wanted to say that and bear my heart on this. I feel very strongly that this bill is not needed. There is no problem, and it's a bill waiting for a solution. Thank you, Mr. President.
On the favorable committee report, working on the senator from the 26th district.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to add some historical context to what my colleague just said, often when we think of church and state, we think of it the wrong way. When you look at the history of this, yes, 1954, 2 o'clock in the morning on a voice vote, Lyndon Johnson, who was running for re-election, had a number of churches to come against him, and so he had this voice amendment passed. The truth is, when we talk about who is the church, when we talk about who represents the church or who really is the church legally, it's not the pastor anyway. The church origin, the board, whichever elected board that congregation has chosen to be the official board of the church, that's who is referred to when it says the church, in their words, cannot participate. The church is only those who are who have been elected by their congregation to speak for the church. As for the pastor, who is an individual and a citizen who cannot have his or her freedom of speech taken away, they can do anything they want from the pulpit or anywhere else. So it's defining. I used to tell my students I taught church, religion, and politics. I know y'all are shocked to know that that was my subject. But in teaching that, I said to them, words are important, and you can't say the church is everyone in here. If you're the pastor, sir, you can't make those decisions. It's made by everyone that's in here, the same it is. Now, relative to the Black church has always been the powerful voice of the church. Going way back to slavery, they have always had a voice. Going back to the time of Jim Crow and all else, we would not have had, as you said, sir, we would not have had a civil rights movement if it were not for a 26-year-old preacher coming to his little congregation in Alabama and bringing people together in that church to say we will have a voice. I do not think that the voice of the church in any way should be silenced, or any individual at all. So just for an historical context, on what we're talking about. We want us to all make the right decisions with the right emphasis on words. Of course, as a pastor running for politics, I endorse myself every Sunday. Every Sunday, I'm like, I say the Lord. No, anyway, but so we want to be careful that we're not stifling any voice, but that we're making it all inclusive, which I don't think now that this particular bill does. I just wanted to offer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, question is on the report. Yes, recognized Senator from Baltimore County.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to stand up because I support this legislation. Some of you may know that outside of standing on this floor and representing the people of District 44, in my other capacity, I'm an attorney that works for an affordable housing organization, a 501c3 that's subject to the Johnson Amendment. And I can tell you that most charities do not want to be put in the position of being political animals. There is a revenue ruling that was done back in, I think it's 2007-41, that goes through numerous examples of what political activity is that's prohibited. There is nothing wrong with a house of worship talking about its beliefs and its principles and talking about issues that are important. That's what Dr. King did. He talked about issues that were important to his congregants. What he did not do was stand in the pulpit and say which political candidate that it was that he was going to support in an upcoming election. That is not what you can do. And I know that we'll get questions within my office, and I'm talking about in my other capacity, where you're asked, what can I do when I put on the candidates forum? How do I deal with these particular issues in an election year? Because all of this stuff is very facts and circumstance based. One of the other issues that hasn't been talked about is just the idea of contributions. And churches are a bit different. You have, and I believe the idea of this push behind getting rid of the Johnson Amendment is because you have certain activists that have been looking to try to funnel money through their houses of worship in order to attack generally Democrats. That's on that national level. Charities, when it comes to their contributions, for the most part, you have no idea who's contributing to those organizations unless there's a certain amount that then has to be reported on the 990. But back to my point, it's good that we don't have our 501c3 public charities who receive tax exemption, income tax exemption, and for you all who donate to those organizations and get charitable deductions not to be put into this spot. So I'm glad for the bill, and I know this is something that is supported by most nonprofit organizations.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, recognize the Senator from Prince George's.
Yeah, I generally speaking, I wouldn't have got up on this, but I just have watched some of the historical texts from Dr. King, and in particular, there was an election in California that I remember observing and seeing where he actually did make a declaration from the pulpit. I mean, that just is just factually the case, and I just think it's important to say that. I also just want to say that I wasn't going to get up, but I'm trying to understand at the same time, like literally on Sunday, was at a church, and it was a guest preacher. The guest preacher, though, was talking about the challenges of he just said it, Trump administration, and the impact that the Trump administration was having on African Americans in this country. And I'm trying to understand if that would then be deemed as a violation based on what we're doing here. Would there be some question to that someone might try to do? And if that is the case, and I believe that it would be, because a lot of times that's what happens. You know, all of a sudden there's a chilling effect that occurs. I'm deeply concerned about that. I mean, this is a place, this is our public square for many of us as African Americans, a place where we do come together. And so that really does trouble me. And I only get up because, again, I do know that Dr. King did do that, standing up for what he thought was right in the place where he reached the most people. Thank you.
All right. Question is on the favorable report. Recognize the bill sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is about Maryland's 41,000 nonprofit organizations, our arts organizations, our fire stations, our battered women's shelters, our food pantries. These folks, for 72 years, have been following the law created by a Republican Congress, as the senator from District 26 said, and signed into law by Republican President Eisenhower. It protects our taxpayer money from subsidizing partisan politics, and it protects our nonprofits from being pressured into getting into partisan politics. Our battered women's shelter, our food pantries should not be subject to a big donor encouraging or mandating, threatening that unless you endorse my candidate publicly, put them in your newsletter, campaign for them, then I'm going to withhold my money. That doesn't work. That doesn't work for our communities. And our nonprofit organizations are in every single community. Why is this necessary? The senator from District 6 asked. The reason this bill is before us, and I thank the president for his support of this bill, the reason this is before us is because of a pending case that the senator from District 23 referenced. It is still pending. There are 2 evangelical churches in a case in Texas. And if that case rules for the churches, the fear is that the floodgates will open and that all nonprofits will be subject to being allowed to get into partisan politics. I have a chart here that I referenced yesterday that indicates all the things that faith institutions can do today and would be able to do if this bill were to become law. And this only becomes law if it's triggered, if the Johnson Amendment is repealed or weakened, and the Attorney General makes that ruling. This would not go into effect automatically. This is only if our nonprofits were threatened. And what are we doing? We're preparing for the possibility of this court ruling coming down literally any day, any week. That's why this is before us. If you do a Control F, find in the bill, as amended, and look up the word church, or faith, or religion, or anything, you will see that this bill changes none of those things. Everything that is legal now is legal with this incorporated. Today, as a result of an executive order from President Trump in 2017, there is an executive order that tells the Trump IRS not to enforce any partisan politics handled by faith institutions. It's not happening now. And in the 72-year history, there have been 4 nonprofits whose nonprofit status were revoked. None of those were churches. And as I said yesterday, there's only one church in 72 years, and it was because that church, as a church, literally bought ads against Bill Clinton. So this is not something that happens commonly. This is not something we're worried about. Any faith leader, any clergy person can today host debates, voter registration drives, souls to the polls, have people speak on their pulpit, and frankly, it happens that there are endorsements. The faith leader can do it themselves very comfortably within the law, but again, with lack of enforcement, they can do it even more directly. So I see that my good friend from District 21 probably wants me to yield to ask me a question. So let me acknowledge that, and please, Senator.
Let's recognize the senator from College Park.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. I want to start by saying I have great respect for the sponsor and for Lyndon Johnson. But I have a couple of questions about the bill.
Yes.
Senator may proceed.
First of all, this would apply to nonprofit organizations in Maryland.
Yes.
Does that imply that if the court decision goes the way you don't want it to go, the federal court decision, that out-of-state nonprofits could do exactly what you don't want in-state nonprofits to do?
Great question. It's if they raise money, if they're incorporated out of state, but they raise money in Maryland, they would be covered.
But as long as they don't raise money in Maryland, they can get into all our races.
The United Way of Pennsylvania can do what it wants in Maryland.
Okay, that's a little concerning, but okay, that's a helpful answer.
Yep.
Second question, which goes to Senator Augustine's point about
Senator from the 47th.
My friend, the senator from the 47th. I apologize. About the example of Dr. King. Under this bill, as I understand it, a pastor could endorse a candidate for public office in a social media post, at a rally. Under this bill, could a pastor endorse a candidate from the pulpit?
This bill is silent on that. This bill is silent on that. So the Johnson Amendment is reasonably clear for 72 years that they shouldn't, but they do, and it's not enforced. This bill is silent. So this bill is about nonprofit organizations not being forced to get into partisan politics.
How would this law be enforced in Maryland?
The Attorney General and the Secretary of State, who jointly oversee our nonprofit organizations, first it would have to be triggered if the Johnson Amendment is weakened or removed. And then the amendments say that if there were a violation, if it were a serious violation after it had been reported and investigated, the first step would be a warning.
Mm-hmm.
The second step would be mediation.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see if we can figure it out.
Yeah.
Only subsequently would there be the option of a revocation of nonprofit status.
So the enforcement would be the revocation, potentially.
And there was a fine that's been knocked down to $1,000.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
In closing, Mr. President, I just want to finish, and I thank the senator from District 21 for his questions. Our friend from District 43 happened to give me this last night, and I thank her for that. 4 senators have invoked the beloved late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and there's a quote on his unwillingness to endorse a candidate for president in the very tightly contested 1960 presidential campaign. And he said, quote, "I have been asked from many quarters whether it is my intention to endorse one of the presidential candidates. The organization of which I am president, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, from its inception and in its constitution, has been nonpartisan. Accordingly, as its titular head, I am unable to endorse a political party or its candidate." So, Mr. President, there are a lot of concerns and a lot of questions about this bill, and it's already been a long day, and we have a lot more to do. So with that, I am going to move to lay this bill over, because we do have amendments, and if anyone has any suggested amendments to clarify this bill in a way that makes sure that we can protect our 41,000 nonprofits without any concerns about any implication for our faith institutions, I would be happy to hear your thoughts. And that's the motion, Mr. President.
Senator, I think we'd have to withdraw that motion. I think first we'd have to motion to reconsider the vote by which the amendments were adopted. and then
Okay. Or I can just special order the bill until.
Either one. Is
Okay. I'm
point of
pondering how
parliamentary
much time to
procedure.
give it. Why don't I suggest special ordering it until first session on Monday, which will give everybody lots of time, and then let's see if we can come up with something. I don't want to take the body's time if we're not going to come up with something that the body can feel good about.
Fair enough. All right.
Thank
Any
you, Mr.
objections to
President.
the motion?
Mr.
Recognize
President.
Senator from District 1.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe there's a motion already on the floor.
The motion is the motion of special orders is supersedes a motion to adopt. So, all right. So the question is on whether to special order the bill to the appropriate time on Monday. Any objections? Without objection, the motion carries. We'll take it up on Monday. All right. I think we'll pause there. I think little hangriness hitting here at the witching hour of 2 o'clock. Let's check in. I think we're going to try to do, let's try for 4:15. 4:15. 4:15. Seems there's some consternation. Can committees get it? Is 2 hours enough? But 2 hours enough? Yes, no?
We're coming back at 4:30, is what you said?
Okay, 4:30 is fine. 4:30 is fine. Let's.
Okay.
But if we say it, let's actually. Let's actually get it there. 4:30. Let's do 4:30. So we're not here till 11.
Okay, so Senate Finance has 20 bills to vote. We're going to come in at 2:30. Bring your lunch.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. Tripoli.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Tripoli will meet at 3 p.m. for a very short voting session. 3 p.m.
3 p.m. Budget and tax.
Sorry about that, Mr. President. Trying to figure it out. We'll be going out with the full committee on capital at 2:30.
2:30. 2:30. BYOL. BYOL. All right. Judicial proceedings. All set. All right. Excellent. Yes, Senator from Howard and Montgomery? Nope.
The Rules Committee.
A Rules Committee. Yes, Chair of Rules Committee.
The Rules Committee is meeting today immediately after session in the Red Room.
Rules immediately after session. Rules immediately after session. Any further announcements? Senator, Executive Noms? Senators, please. Almost there.
Thank you, Mr. President. Executive Nom, the Executive Nom Committee will convene on Monday at 4:30. No, 4:30. 4:30 on Monday. So please be aware and please be there.
4:30 it is. Thank you. Any other announcements before we break? All right, we will keep the chamber secured in between. Let's do a quorum call.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 43 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. But let's check with the chair, budget and tax, maybe an amendment to the time.
Yeah, so 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock for the capital budget.
3 o'clock for capital. All right, now recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until 4:30 promptly this afternoon.
Promptly at 4:30. Without objection, so ordered. See you all in just a few hours.